Let's take a look at the functions of communication. Communication serves five major functions within a group or an organization. Communication acts to manage member behavior in several ways. When employees follow their job descriptions or comply with company policies, communication performs a management function. Communication creates feedback by clarifying to employees what they must do, how well they're doing it, and how they can improve their performance. The work group is a primary source of social interaction for many employees. Communication within the group is fundamental in terms of a mechanism by which members show satisfaction and frustration. Like emotional sharing, persuasion can be good or bad depending on, say, if a leader is trying to persuade a work group to believe in the organization's commitment to corporate social responsibility. The final function of communication is the information exchange. Communication provides the information that individuals and groups need to make decisions. Almost every communication interaction that takes place in a group or organization performs one or more of these functions, and none of the five is more important than the other. Before communication can take place, it needs a purpose, a message. The sender encodes the message, converts it to a symbolic form, and passes it through a medium, a channel, to the receiver who decodes it. Formal channels are established by the organization and transmit messages related to the professional activities of the members. They traditionally follow the authority chain within the organization. Other forms of messages, such as personal or social, follow informal channels, which are spontaneous and subject to individual choice. Noise represents communication barriers that distort the clarity of the message, such as perpetual problems, information overload, systematic difficulties, or cultural differences. The final link in the communication process is the feedback loop. Feedback is the check on how successful we've been in transferring our messages as originally intended. It determines whether understanding has been achieved. Communication can flow vertically or laterally through formal small group networks or the informal grapevine. We subdivide the vertical dimension into downward and upward directions. Communication that flows from one level of a group to a lower level is downward communication. Group leaders and managers use it to assign goals, provide job instructions, explain policies and procedures, point out problems that need attention, and offer feedback. In downward communication, managers must explain the reasons why a decision was made. Explanations increase employee commitment and the support of decisions. Managers might think that sending a message once is enough to get it through, but research suggests managerial communication must be repeated several times and through a variety of different media to be truly effective. Another problem in downward communication is the one-way nature. Generally, managers inform employees, but rarely solicit their advice or opinions. The best communicators explain the reasons behind their downward communication, but also solicit communication from employees they supervise. That leads us to the next direction, upward communication. Upward communication flows to a higher level in the group or organization. Upward communication keeps managers aware of how employees feel about their jobs, coworkers, and the organization in general. Managers also rely on upward communication for ideas on how conditions can be improved. Given that most managers' job responsibilities have expanded, upward communication is increasingly difficult because managers can be overwhelmed and easily distracted. To engage in effective upward communication, try to communicate in short summaries rather than in long explanations. Support your summaries with actionable items and prepare an agenda to make sure you use your boss's attention well. Your delivery can be as important as the content of your communication. When communication occurs between members at the same level, we describe it as lateral. Lateral communication saves time and facilitates coordination. Some lateral relationships are formally sanctioned. More often, they're informally created to short-circuit the vertical hierarchy and expedite action. Because strictly adhering to formal vertical structure for all communications can be inefficient, lateral communication occurring with management's knowledge and support can be beneficial. But dysfunctional conflict can result when formal vertical channels are breached. Formal organizational networks can be complicated, including hundreds of people and several levels. The chain rigidly follows the formal chain of command. This network approximates the communication channels that you might find in a rigid three-level organization. The wheel relies on a central figure to act as the conduit for all group communication. It simulates the communication network you might find on a team with a strong leader. The all-channel network permits group members to actively communicate with each other. It's most often characterized by self-managed teams in which group members are free to contribute and no single person takes on a leadership role. Many organizations today like to consider themselves all-channel, meaning that anyone can communicate with anyone, but sometimes they shouldn't. The structure of the wheel facilitates the emergence of a leader. The all-channel network is best if you desire a high member satisfaction, and the chain is best if accuracy is most important. The effectiveness of each network is determined by the dependent variable that concerns you. The informal communication network in a group or organization is called the grapevine. The grapevine is an important part of any group or organization communication network. It serves employees' needs. Small talk creates a sense of closeness and friendship among those who share information, although research suggests it often does so at the expense of those in the outgroup. It also gives managers a feel for the morale of their organization, identifies issues employees consider important, and helps them tap into employee anxiety. Evidence indicates that managers can study the gossip driven largely by employee social networks to learn more about how positive and negative information is flowing through the organization. One study found that social talkers are so influential that they were significantly more likely to retain their jobs during layoffs. In addition to the opportunities for managers to learn from the grapevine, some forms of gossip provide pro-social motivation for employees to help each other achieve organizational goals. Managers should do this to minimize the negative consequences of rumors by limiting their range and impact. A primary means of conveying messages is oral communication. Speeches, formal one-on-one and group discussions, and the informal rumor mill or grapevine are popular forms of oral communication. The advantages of oral communication are speed, feedback, and exchange. We can convey a verbal message and receive a response in minimal time. If the receiver is unsure of the message, rapid feedback allows the sender to detect and correct it quickly. Researchers indicate that we're prone to listener burnout, in which we tune out the other person and rush to offer advice. Active listening, in which we remove distractions, make eye contact, paraphrase, and encourage the talker to continue, helps us learn more and build trust if we're genuine and not judgmental. One major disadvantage of oral communication surfaces whenever a message has to pass through a number of people. The more people, the greater the potential distortion. Meetings can be formal or informal, include two or more people, and take place in almost any venue. Although 11 million meetings take place in the United States daily, some people hate them. Good interpersonal communication is key to making meetings effective. Written communication includes memos, emails, and any other method that conveys written words. Written business communication today is usually conducted via letters, PowerPoint, email, instant messaging, text messaging, social media, apps, and blogs. Each has unique current business communication applications. Letter writing can be used to great effect in business, adding a personal touch to a communication or, alternatively, creating a lasting document to signal an official communication. PowerPoint and other slide formats like Prezi can be an excellent mode of communication because slide generating software combines words with visual elements to engage the reader and help explain complex ideas. The use of email in business is so pervasive, it's hard to imagine life without it. There are more than 3.1 billion active email accounts worldwide, and corporate employees average 105 emails each day. The business benefits of email messages are obvious. They can be written, edited, sent, and stored quickly and cheaply. The guidelines for the business use of texting are still evolving, but experts continually caution that business text language should be as formal as any other business communication. Nowhere has online communication been more transformed than in the rise of social networks like Facebook and LinkedIn, and business is taking advantage of the opportunities these social media platforms present. Social networking has become a tool for prospective employees, hiring managers, employees, and human resource divisions. Every time we deliver a verbal message, we also impart an unspoken language. Sometimes the nonverbal component may stand alone as a powerful part of our message. Why do people choose one channel of communication over another? A model of media richness helps explain channel selection among managers. Channels differ in their capacity to convey information. Some are rich in that they can handle multiple cues simultaneously, facilitate rapid feedback, and be very personal. Others are lean in that they score low in these factors. Face-to-face conversation scores the highest in channel richness because it transmits the most information per communication episode, multiple information cues, immediate feedback, and the personal touch of being present. Interpersonal written media such as formal reports and bulletins rate the lowest in richness. In sum, rich channels give us the chance to observe. The unconscious aspects of communication help us to understand the full meaning of the message. When these aspects are missing, we must look for other clues to deduce the sender's emotions and attitudes. To understand the process of persuasion, it's useful to consider two ways we process information. Think about the last time you bought a can of soda. Did you carefully research brands, or did you reach for the can that had the most appealing advertising? If we're honest, we'll admit glitzy ads and catchy slogans have an influence on our choices as consumers. We often rely on automatic processing, a relatively superficial consideration of evidence and information, making use of heuristics. Automatic processing takes little time and low effort, so we tend to use it for processing persuasive messages related to topics we don't care much about. The disadvantage is that it lets us be fooled easily by a variety of tricks. Now consider the last time you chose a place to live. You probably sourced experts who knew something about the area, gathered information about prices, and considered the costs and benefits of renting versus buying. You were engaging in a more effortful, controlled processing, a detailed consideration of evidence and information relying on facts, figures, and logic. One of the best predictors of whether people will use an automatic or controlled process for reacting to a persuasive message is their level of interest in it. Interest levels reflect the impact a decision will have on your life. People who are well informed about a subject area are more likely to use controlled processing strategies. They've already thought through various arguments for or against a specific course of action. Another factor that influences whether people use an automatic or controlled processing strategy is the characteristics of the message itself. Messages provided through richer communication channels encourage more deliberative processing. Messages provided through relatively lean communication channels with little opportunity for users to interact with the content of the message encourage automatic processing. Match your persuasive message to the type of processing your audience is likely to use. Several barriers can slow or distort effective communication, barriers that we need to recognize and we need to reduce. Filtering refers to a sender's purposefully manipulating information so the receiver will see it more favorably. A manager who tells his boss what he feels the boss wants to hear is filtering information. The more vertical levels in the organization's hierarchy, the more opportunities there are for filtering. But some filtering will occur whether there are status differences. Selective perception is important because the receivers in the communication process selectively see and hear based on their needs, motivations, experience, backgrounds, and other personal characteristics. Individuals have a finite capacity for processing data. When information we have to work with exceeds our processing capacity, the result is information overload. You may interpret the same message differently depending on your mood. People in negative moods are more likely to scrutinize messages in greater detail, whereas those in positive moods tend to accept communication at face value. Even when we're communicating in the same language, words mean different things to different people. It's easy to ignore silence or lack of communication because it's absence of information. This is often a mistake, however. Silence itself can be the message to communicate non interest or an inability to deal with the topic. An estimated 20% of college students suffer from debilitating communication apprehension or social anxiety. These people experience undue tension and anxiety in oral communication, written communication, or both. The final barrier to effective communication is outright misrepresentation of information or lying. People who tell one or two lies per day, with some individuals telling considerably more. The difficulty in detecting liars makes this especially strong barrier to effective communication. Effective communication is difficult under the best of conditions. Cross-cultural factors clearly create the potential for increased communication problems. A gesture that's well understood and acceptable in one culture can be meaningless or lewd in another. Several problems are related to language difficulties or differences in cross-cultural communications. First are barriers caused by semantics. Words mean different things to different people, and some don't translate between cultures. Second are barriers caused by word connotations. Words imply different things in different languages. Third are barriers caused by tone differences. In some cultures, language is formal. In others, it's informal. In some cultures, the tone changes depending on the context. Fourth are differences in tolerance for conflict and methods for resolving conflict. People from individualistic cultures tend to be more comfortable with direct conflict and will make the source of their disagreements overt. There's much to be gained from business intercultural communications. Because we have differences, we have an opportunity to reach the most creative solutions possible with the help of others if we communicate effectively. When communicating with people from a different culture, what can you do to reduce misrepresentation? Know yourself. Recognize your own cultural identity and bias as being critical to understanding the unique viewpoints of other people. Foster a climate of mutual respect. State facts, not your interpretation. Then delay judgment until you've had sufficient time to observe and interpret the situation from the differing perspectives of all concerned. Consider the other person's point of view. Remind members of a group your common goals, mutual respect, and need to adapt.